This morning, host Holly Willoughby, and I feel I can't just say this dispassionately as if she's just the host of a television show. She's my friend. I've been friendly with her for years and years, and obviously I work with her every week, year in, year out on This Morning. I'm absolutely devastated to be reporting on this story this evening. It's not something I can do as if I don't have any kind of involvement in it. I am absolutely horrified by this. And now I've said that, let's get on with the story. Holly Willoughby has been left shocked and distraught, naturally, after finding out about a man's alleged plot to kidnap and murder her. The TV star was forced to pull out of the show at the last minute yesterday after detectives found some sinister and threatening messages and placed her under police guard at her family home. Her This Morning colleague sent her this message.
We're not going to talk too much about it, but we have to start with a story about one of our own. Holly is on the front pages this morning after police arrested a 36-year-old man over an alleged kidnap plot. He's now been charged by Essex police.
We're obviously all shocked to hear the news, and we want to send our love and biggest hugs to Holly and her family.
Absolutely.
And, of course, I echo that sentiment. 36-year-old Gavin Plumb appeared in court today. You can see a picture of him there, charged with the offences and has been remanded in custody. It's alleged he was in possession of weapons and had conspired with another man based in the United States to carry out what was described as a detailed plan. Joining me now in the studio is security expert Will Geddes. Good to see you, Will. And also joining me down the line, Julia Atherley, news reporter at The Sun. We'll start with Julia because she's been covering this story. Obviously, it's absolutely horrifying, this story, isn't it? I mean, Holly is not a controversial figure. She's a presenter of a magazine show talking about fashion and recipes and with doctors and cooks and chefs and people from soaps. She's not the kind of person that would polarise anybody or say anything at all to upset or offend or anything of that kind. And this is just shocking, isn't it?
Yeah, so what we know so far, we know that Holly's been under 24/7 police surveillance since the arrest, since the plot came to light. A man was arrested on Wednesday evening. He's since been charged with soliciting to commit murder over an alleged plot to kidnap. And he has since appeared in court this morning at Chelmsford Magistrates Court. He's security worker Gavin Plumb from Harlow in Essex. And yeah, it's a really shocking case. The details that have emerged about him possibly having weapons in his home, which have been found by police, and arranging for someone to come over from the US. Yeah, it's completely shocking. And, we understand that he had a very detailed plan for what was going to happen and, this horrible kidnap plot. So, yeah, it's very shocking.
It's absolutely horrifying. Do we have any idea at all of how the police came by the information or how you at The Sun came by the information? How did anybody know that he was trying to do this or wanted to do this?
We don't so far. I mean, we understand it was some sort of messaging, but that's as far as we know so far. It's quite early on in the investigation.
And we know that Holly is being looked after by police, and they call it under police guard or something of that kind. Do we have any idea how long that will continue, or when she might go back to work, or what might happen next?
We don't know. So she was supposed to appear on This Morning on Thursday. She didn't, and Alison Hammond stepped in. We understand that was quite a last-minute decision. She's normally off on Friday, so we weren't expecting her on our screens this morning. But yeah, police have been outside her home at least for the last day, and we don't know how long that's going to continue for.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Julia. Good to hear from you. And obviously, as I've said already, sending Holly our love and support. I'm joined in the studio by Will Geddes, who is the security expert. And obviously, you don't know the actual individual details of this particular case, but you're no stranger to looking after and protecting famous people in the public eye who, for whatever reason, attract the attention of, I don't know how you would even describe these people.
Well, fixated people is probably one of the best, generic terms that one can use. It can move into stalkers. It can move into those that make malicious threats. The one thing that I would say is there's very rarely any rationale behind why they particularly target a particular celebrity or person in the public eye. But the one thing that certainly will be evident right now by the police still being present and still providing this protection around Holly's family home will be the fact that this is still an ongoing investigation. And there are probably a number of different strands that need to be sourced out and proven out before they can feel comfortable to remove that security. And then ultimately, there's that awfully difficult transition, and I've done this a number of times, where the family, or the principal, as we would call them, has to move from police protection, which can't be there forever, into potentially private security. And that has to involve a number of very sensitively managed subjects, because the family will feel at a heightened sense of alert and fear, to a certain extent, and paranoia, until the matter gets resolved or certainly drawn down. And I'm sure it's not the first time. I've met Holly a number of times, as you know.
Yes.
It won't be the first time that she's had her stalkers. It won't be the first time that this morning have received weird letters from fans and fixated people. But this is on an entirely different level.
Yes, and this seems to be not just one hugely disturbed individual, it's alleged, but they keep talking about a network, and they keep talking about an American connection and this kind of a thing. And that's far bigger and more kind of formal and frightening than one crazed, fixated person, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, again, this is what the police are going to be quantifying right now, particularly with Mr. Plumb's devices. They're going to be going through these forensically, looking at all the messages, looking at all the communications that he may have had, to try and establish the size of that network, who these people are, whether it's a fantasy or whether it's a viable threat. From what it would appear, certainly the Crown Prosecution Service wouldn't have progressed this unless they felt that it was a viable threat that required, obviously, prosecution.
Yes, and you know, you say that you have brought protection to and you know, ensured the safety of many people in the public eye. And it's very difficult walk to walk, isn't it? Because, you know, if you look at Paul McCartney, for example, Paul McCartney, people say and they praise him because he leads this, in inverted commas, normal kind of life. So you might see him walking out of the gym. You might see him, you know, having a stroll. He doesn't appear, at any rate, I don't know whether he does or doesn't, to have protection with him. He appears to just be a man walking out of a gym. If he wanted to go and buy a bun, he could buy a bun. If he fancied a coffee, he could have a coffee. Doesn't have to have his personal protection officer following him or sitting 2 tables away or that kind of thing. At least that's what it appears. Now, I don't know, but lots of people say, you know, that the ideal thing is to be a very famous person and just lead a normal life, and you pretty much can, and you really kind of should, and it's absolutely absurd to kind of have an enormous security detail with you at all times. But I don't know whether that's just because we don't see the security. You tell me.
Well, it's a combination of a couple of things. I mean, first of which is, for the principal, no principal that I've ever met has willingly wanted to have close protection.
No.
And quite often it's only introduced when either they have a heightened sense of paranoia or there's a specific threat that's being made. But the one thing that I would say is that the principal themselves has to understand that they will draw attention. People will want selfies, they'll want autographs, they will approach, they will shout out in the street. And as long as they understand that and as long as they feel comfortable with that, then yes, of course, they can try and lead as normal a life as possible. However, with certain considerations, one of which is not becoming too predictable. One of the things that we're always drumming into our principals, or I certainly am, is about a pattern of life.
Yeah.
We're all creatures of habit by routine. And what we have to be very careful about is that we don't set a very predictable pattern, which, if there is a threat out there, like Mr. Plumb, who wants to kidnap you, then you're not making it easy for them. They don't know that you're always going to go to the same coffee shop or you're always going to the same gym at the same time. You know, you have to randomise things a little bit.
It's terribly difficult if you're somebody, though,
Yeah.
and I'm speaking from experience on this one, you know, who has a daily show,
Yes.
as Holly does.
Yeah.
If you have a daily show, whether it's a radio show, television show, a game show, whatever it is, then usually it's very clear where you are. It's very clear when you finish. It's very clear when you come out the door. It's pretty clear which door it's going to be. You know, it's because it's a daily, habitual routine, isn't it? And you can't pretend you're not there when you are there, and you can't suddenly be somewhere else.
Well, they always say, or we say, that certainly there's that last few hundred yards or half a mile to your home or to your office that you would regularly go to.
Yeah.
It's everywhere in between, beyond that. So it's the route that you possibly take. So maybe you don't always stand at the same point on the platform if you're getting on the tube. You don't always follow the same route when you're driving in. You consider different options to make it slightly more awkward or difficult for a potential threat if it was going to materialise.
Do you have any idea how long you think Holly might have that sort of intense police protection?
Well, I would say, again, that's as long as a piece of string. We don't really know at this stage. But the one thing I would say to Holly would be to be very cautious about when she moves from police to private security, because the biggest fear I always say to principals is that once you have close protection there, it becomes a safety blanket, and it's very difficult to let go of. So you have to appreciate, unless you're going to expect to have it for the rest of your life, that there will be a time where you do need to remove it. But it should be at a time where you feel secure, safe in your own home, and that there aren't any prevalent threats, obviously, facing you.